So
in a
you know how
different
to do
place
that.
now.
Thank you, hon.
Well, hello, chapter 17. My chapter is 67, based in Dallas, Texas. I participate in the SBE Education Committee. I was a former teacher for 8 years. One of my professors, Len Watson from Chicago and Scope Focus, is also on the Education Committee. And one of my former students, when I taught broadcasting in high school, Fred Willard, who is engineering director at Univision in Washington, is also on the SBE committee. So I'm active in trying to recruit new blood into it because a lot of the engineers have retired or gotten to the point where they don't want to work all the time. And some of the companies that hire engineers don't seem to think that an engineer full-time on a facility is a good expenditure, which boggles my mind. I've become to think the same thing of general managers, but I guess that's not a fair thing to do. But anyway, we'll start the presentation. What I was, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Started to lose it 2 days ago. But one of the things I wanted to do is talk about the considerations in the decision making for a playout system for radio. And I noted many of the members attending this SBE meeting are from television. So this may have slightly less significant relevance, but I think some of the same things may apply to any television automation system. I think a lot of television is done manually, much less than radio, or much more than radio, which I think a lot of stations have, due to financial issues, have gone to voice tracking or syndicated programming or other things like that that don't really involve having an additional human at the facility. So I'm going to start with the session here. Dagwood supplied the sandwiches, but I'm not Dagwood. So anyway, enjoy your lunch from Dagwoods. And today, we're going to be talking about lunch meat. You may say, what has that got to do with automation systems? But what I've done is break it down into some logical parts, locations, users, networking, convenience, hardware, so forth, which happens to spell out lunch meat. No great trick. All I did was look at the kinds of things that I was going to discuss and did a word search to find a word that came out with it. And I thought lunch meat at lunch would be perfect. So from an automation standpoint in radio, it has become much more critical. And I dare to say that I have not been in a radio station that does not have some type of assisted playout in several years. They just aren't live any longer. So I wanted to go back and take a look at what automation or playout systems, as they call them in Great Britain, might look like. Well, this isn't a playout system, and it was what radio stations looked like probably back in the 60s. I started in radio in 1969, apprenticed for 2 years while we converted a 10-watt FM radio station at the university to a 50 kilowatt with a grant from CPB, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. So I apprenticed for 2 years before I was signed off to sit for my second class, and another year before I was eligible to, as far as the university was concerned, sit for my first class. So I've had my first class license since 1971. But while I was on the air at a local radio station, commercial station, it looked very much like this. Records that provided Q-burn had a relatively light spot load, but this gentleman had significantly better equipment than I did, because our commercials were on 5-inch reels stuck on a pegboard that were numbered, and you had to queue up uh, all of your spots that played in a stop set on 4 Ampex reel-to-reel machines. And should there be a 5-element stop set, we had to back one of those off or fast forward and keep track of it and throw another one on while the second one was playing. So it was kind of a sleight of hand to get a program on back in those days. They did, however, buy cart machines, and these almost look like Harris cart machines from the mid to late 60s era. So I thought I'd gone and died to heaven having cart machines. So that's one of the great advances that I was able to see. Now, this is what automation systems evolved into. And notice that everyone's wearing ties, and I think people dress more formally in radio than we do now. But we have go-karts, reel-to-reel for musical content. There's a controller up here, more go-karts. Instacarts typically 48 trays, and they could individually slide into a play position. Anybody deal with automation systems like this in your career?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you know how enjoyable they were to work on, especially the cart machines, and also the controllers. Sometimes the controllers were simply pins put in a matrix, a control matrix, to cause it to do certain things after the pin in the previous matrix executed itself. Just really convoluted process. Now what's happened? Fast forward, there are very few, if any, moving parts in a control room. The keyboard, the mouse might be the only 2 moving parts, but everything seems to have gone to multiple displays, and I actually can't tell if this is, I can't tell what product this is, but as you can see, it has a play stack, and it seems like it has lots of hotkeys, instant play buttons, but I have no idea. If anybody happens to recognize any of that stuff, I would be grateful if you could share it with me. Now, this is just a sample of some modern automation systems from various eras. This one seems to be, excuse me, pretty heavily dependent upon icons, and you'd have to determine or learn what those icons meant. I guess they were supposed to be there to help you tie things together, but I can't figure out the translation. But most of them had a play stack like we see here, and like this one appears to be. This one's a play stack, and this is a play stack. So anyway, these are some of the iterations of what modern or not so modern playout systems happen to look like now for radio. Now, back to the lunch meet. What we're going to look at are the locations, or talk about locations, users, networking, convenience, hardware, maintenance, audio type, environment, and training. And if you're guessing that I had to pick certain substitutions for words that might mean something else in order to get something that tied together and made lunch meat, you're quite correct. So we'll talk about each one of these considerations, and it's something to think about when you determine that you may need to change a playout system and some of the things to consider. There are so many things to consider that it's hard to document all, and the considerations vary for each location, each company, and the facilities in which those playout systems will go. So, as far as locations, how many stations are using automation systems in that same facility? If you've got sister stations or multiple stations, and a lot of groups have taken to sharing programs, sharing talent, actually taking entire day parts, substituting localization for IDs, and even some sponsors through the facilities of more modern playout systems. And really, if they're distant, how far apart are they? How are they connected? Are they connected via tie line? Are they connected with fiber in some way, shape, or form so that things are transmitted at a high rate of speed? And one of the big things is, are there backups for automation systems and connectivity to go along with those backups? It is not uncommon for an automation system to fail. It may not be the machine, it may not be the software, it may be the data input that causes a failure. So if you have a backup, you're in a much better position because you can switch over to the backup and hopefully maintain some logical measure of control. Now, for you engineers, excuse me, are you responsible for maintaining all of them? Or do you have somebody that assists you? Most importantly, does the management or ownership know and respect that you're the one that keeps them on the air? Does anybody have, I guess, a job that causes you to even fill up the Coke machines anymore? Anybody? Okay, that's good. I am losing my voice. My apologies. And are the playout systems the same type? I'm going to mute here for a second. Maybe I can find the mute. There it is. Work. Okay, how many of the staff are using automation systems in the same facility? Are they part-time? Are they full-time? Are you responsible for training all of them? And once again, does management or ownership know and respect that? And how do the new operators receive training? Now, this is not even if you're changing automation systems, because as you might well know, people come and go in this business, probably at a faster rate than they did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's not uncommon for somebody to be at a radio station for 20 years, and then in the past 10 years, all of a sudden, the churn started to really happen at a faster rate. Now, the other consideration you need to take in mind is it really is virtually impossible to overstate the importance of the network infrastructure in a radio station or a TV station. It is simply the backbone. It's the method by which information gets from one point to the other. And want to ask just a couple of questions. And I have a feeling that everybody at this table is probably done the things that are, here. Um, has the switch been updated? You know, when you first probably got a networking system in or a network in, it might have been a lower category of cabling, Cat 5. Um, I've actually seen 2.5 gig switches connected to Cat 5. And the simple reason for that is just what it says, was too much trouble to run new cable because the cable went up the wall and down the ceiling and through conduit. Some made it easy on themselves and put cable trays up a little higher, but some things just didn't happen the way they should have. Um, in the circumstance where you may have a failure, is it convenient to install a backup switch of the same type for the systems so you don't have to reconfigure quite as much? I know a number of stations that have had switch failures. And hopefully your switch is on a UPS, and it is along with your layout system, because these are some of the things that take quite a while to come back up. And some other things to be considerate of is the station's sales manager or station manager's computer on the network that is supporting the automation. Getting systems like business systems that reach out to other parts of the universe, whether it has to be for acquisition of commercials or signing contracts or anything else. Those should be on separate networks, or at the very, very least, different subnets, so that one can't see the other. And I think that's one of the basic standard practices that every facility should follow. Now, as far as convenience, this is something that anytime anyone has to do any work, any maintenance inside a control room, want to determine some things about the computers. What's the format factor of the computer? Is it rack mount, tower, desktop? Typically, if it's rack mount, it's going to be in a TOC or an operations center. A tower could be anywhere, and towers sometimes find themselves on the floor somewhere. Desktops tend to find themselves either on a shelf in a control room, or they may find themselves on top of a counter in a control room. And if they're towers or desktops, are they in the studios? Studios present a number of problems when it comes to having computers in there. They're prone to be moved. They're prone to be exposed to liquids. They're prone to be moved and have plugs pulled out. Can they be accessed by the air staff? That's when you go inside and need to have some remedial action on the playout systems. Can you get to them without crawling or lying on your back? Can the computers be disturbed or worse by the air staff? And when I say worse, could they be unplugged accidentally? They typically should be out of the way of anybody that's not in charge of that computer. It should be like the speaker on the wall. They shouldn't mess with it. What about computers for programming, sales, traffic, business, uh, anything else in the radio station? They are also part of the automation system because they provide some of the programming, some of the information that the automation system uses to conduct its normal course of business. We want to make sure those are as well maintained as anything else that might be in the direct air chain. Now, the form factor sometimes is determined by the structure of the studios or rack room or the technical operations center. And that's just the way it is because some things have to be purchased to fit where they can be. If you've had the luxury of designing your facility or following in the footsteps of someone who was very thoughtful and put together a third uh, third A triple class wonderful studio, you're fortunate because I've gone into several where things were added on, and where they were added on, more cables were added on, but maybe not put in the cable tray or in the cable chase, and they're just sitting out there, which is just a great invitation for something to get moved or disconnected. How old are the computers? And modern automation systems and playout systems are becoming increasingly more complex. With every feature added, it seems to take more processing power, more RAM, more hard disk space, and pretty much anything that is added will have some sort of an effect on the computer unless you have up-to-date computers and hopefully somewhat overspec. I think in the not too distant past, playout manufacturers were suggesting that they should have 8 gigs of RAM. Then we went to 16 and then 32. And I can tell you, with the exception of the computer that I'm on right now, and I'm in my home office, it has 32 gigs, but every other computer in my office has 64 gigs. And that's just to make sure that with multiple programs open, I'm not getting tied down. Modern automation systems are being expected to interact with servers. They're expected to be able to interact with getting new logs and processing the logs, integrating those logs into the database. So as time goes on, more power, more RAM, more disk space. And if you haven't switched to SSDs, it might be time to think about that. The price of SSDs have gone down dramatically. And I'm not going to suggest that if you have a multi-station facility that has a centralized server, that SSDs are the answer because sometimes they can be terribly expensive, especially if you're getting into the 8 terabyte range to be able to support the accumulation of audio files, jingles, and those things that the production staff doesn't want to seem to take out and put somewhere else until it's needed again. Um, is it convenient to install a backup switch that is the same type in a system? If the switch went out, that's kind of the nerve center. It's the brain. If the switch goes out and you don't have one, you have access to one quickly to get everything back up. A playout system can typically, unless audio is being sourced from a central server, the playout system can continue to operate for a bit. But when it comes to integrating logs from both programming, traffic, anything else, it's going to be difficult. A backup switch is something that I think is becoming more common. May not have to be exactly the same one. It could have been the one that you took out that you can use temporarily, but a backup switch is it's essential these days. Um, and is the station and sales manager's computer network. Again, all of those things, and it seems as though people who are directly involved in the operation of the automation system probably have less thought and concern for the sanctity of the automation system that happens to be in the facility. They just don't think about it. Now, when did the external filters get cleaned? Those are the ones that are in front of the computer, maybe behind the, if you're in a rack room, behind the rack cover. Those should be cleaned as often as every 2 months, depending upon your environment. And to take it a step further, when were the internals of the computer cleaned? One thing about dust, it seems to be attracted to um, tiny crevices in computers. You can blow with compressed air as much as you want, but you're still going to be able to find that there is a lot of dust that accumulates. Dust, in addition to making a mess, provides a thermal blanket, and it holds in the heat that allows components to, I would say, uh, die quicker than they should. And if you have a computer that has something that is vulnerable, hasn't been maintained, what are you going to do if you lose the data on that computer because it breaks down? Either the processor, RAM, hard drive, whatever. What's your backup plan? Tape backup? Is it a one of the solutions that automatically updates a second drive in a different location? Is it a RAID? If so, what level of RAID? And have you considered those for each of the traffic systems, the scheduling systems, and have you put in SSDs? SSDs are far more reliable these days than ever before. Cannot can't endorse those more heartily. Okay, for the environment, just 3 words. That's all we have to worry about. Is it clean? Is it cool? And is it clear? And when I say clear, is it able to get fresh air? Is it air conditioned? Is it blowing air that's filtered from uh, an air conditioning system? Because that's going to make it cooler and keep it cleaner. So you just simply can't clean, cool, or clear enough um, the computing system, layout system. So the audio type, and we'll go through some of those because we've had some pretty amazing changes in audio type since I started. Um, Obviously, analog is the most basic type. It has been the most common type for quite some time. Stations that were a little more concerned about audio quality may have gone digital, but there are certain requirements for that that a previously analog setup may not be able to accommodate. Um, and AOIP, and I'm going to guess that most of the people in this meeting are using an AOIP system in some way, shape, or form. Would that be correct? If you can talk back?
Yes, I'd say so.
Okay, good, good. Um, it's one of the things about the AOIP system is you really need to make sure your network is top notch. Um, Make sure because that's what's carrying the signal from one point to the other. The AOIP systems, whether it's Axia, Dante, Wheatstone, Lavo, uh, Ravenna. I think many of those are AES 67 compliant. Um, it just takes a really good network to make sure that all those things can get to where they're supposed to be getting. That also, in addition to the cabling, means that you need a switch that is very suitable and follow your manufacturer's suggestion for that. Just because they're saying they want a Cisco switch, the very best Netgear switch may not have the components that's necessary uh, for proper transmission of audio data. Um, with regard to your system, um, it's typically best to have one sample rate, one bit rate throughout. But we know that that doesn't necessarily happen because as we get uh, commercials, promos, other programming from outside sources, it may come in as something other than a WAV file, and probably more often than not, it's going to be a data reduced file like an MP3. Well, how do you get that back to where it should be? Um, Dueling algorithms in inconsistent levels will drive your processing up a wall. So you need to make sure that as best you can, and I know it's not perfect because automation systems have the capacity to ingest MP3 files. And while they do a fairly decent job, it's really like making fresh orange juice out of Tang. It's close, but you can certainly tell the difference. Um, so make sure that you start with the highest quality audio file that you possibly can. And I don't know whether anybody has used Spec to analyze any of the audio files at random that happen to be in your system, but that will tell you the origin. It will show you the audio spectrum uh, to give you an idea as to how that sound will result from that type file. So if you want and have not used spec, it's a pretty neat tool. Would take you 13 forevers to check every single system there, but it'll give you an idea of where it came from and what quality you could expect from that particular audio file. Come on, there we go. All right, training. I think it goes without saying that operators need to be trained. They need to have respect for the playout system that is essentially providing information to everyone that listens. Your listeners, your advertisers. So training is essential. And I hope everyone here has some sort of a training regimen. Now, there's a lot of churn right now with employees at radio stations. Some of the churn is kind of out the door, and we're reducing staff. I know at least one group that I talked with in the past month has completely emptied the facilities in a number of stations in a region, and had one engineer that takes care of multiple stations. So their training requirements aren't quite the same for their air staff, but the engineer does need training. And I would hope, I would pray that the company that makes the decision to make such drastic reductions would provide training and even backup for any of the engineers that find themselves in charge of 4 markets and 13 radio stations. Just some thoughts about training. The one from Henry Ford is one that I like especially. The only thing worse than training your employees and having them leave is not training them and having them stay. I think that's one of the best ones that I've heard, and I think it's probably one of the truest ones. Ben Franklin, tell me and I forget. Teach me and I may remember. Involve me and I learn, which essentially means don't preach. Don't just tell them, do it and do it with them. And from somebody that's a little more contemporary, um, in learning you will teach, in teaching you will learn. Bill Collins. So for me, I think those elements in training, everybody's got their own method of training. Some organizations do not have a formal training outline, but as we throttle through different employees, you can't expect information to be passed down generation by generation by generation, because there's distortion and there's loss in the accuracy of that training. So some final tips and takeaways. The very best automation and playout system for you is not necessarily the best for everyone. Depending upon what your format is, if it's heavy on personalities, you may need to have a facility that has the world's best database that you can search for things if you need to insert songs. And that goes along with music scheduling. You should have a good music scheduling system that your program director can produce consistently listenable audio. And some of the feature sets in automation systems literally are exploding more now in the past years than they have in my lifetime. You know, I came from a place that had reel-to-reel tapes for commercials, and uh, we went to cart machines, and I thought that was heaven. But now we're starting to use cloud and artificial intelligence. And for me, I came from a cloud company. I was the person that onboarded Radio Cloud from Germany and brought them into this company or into this country and got them established as vendors that could fulfill obligations to radio stations using cloud native products. And cloud native products are not things that are just simply stored in the cloud, but cloud native playout systems can ingest thousands of songs as fast as your internet can carry them. They can instantly spin up multiple computers to resize the capacities for any particular job that you do. And it also has levels of security that you could not possibly have at the individual station or even group level. I know we've all heard of radio stations that have been hacked. But I think the cloud is something that does present a level of security, if not just security for the things you're using, but in the amount of or in the event of failure, it has the ability to provide downloads. And I know Zeta from RCS has this disaster recovery that way. I know a number of other playout systems that are using cloud storage for disaster recovery. Artificial intelligence, I think, is getting better and better and better by the day. I think it's fairly easy to discern what is and what is not a live person. But what artificial intelligence can do is match up things. If you happen to have time, temperature, whatever, for very basic things, artificial intelligence can pull the temperature for a region, put it together, assemble words, assemble bits of information, and put it together. And it really is a very passable option. I don't recommend it for everyone. I think it is in its gestation period, but I do think that it's going to play a significant part in what we do as we move forward. So it is not to be overlooked. And I guess at this time, if you would like to ask any questions or enter into any discussions, I'll be more than happy to participate with that.
Questions, anyone? Thoughts? Any questions from our online viewers? I'll toss one out just for the fun of it. How many stations is DJB involved with?
DJB?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the product. We have multiple products. You may have heard of Radio Spider. It is in several thousand radio stations across the world. The BBC even uses it for its affiliates all the way around the world. We have DJB2. that is our oldest layout system. And I would say it's in the upper hundreds, more than 500. DJB radio growth of DJB2 um, is probably around 500. And our newest product, which is DJB Zone, we use a Postgres database for that. The other ones, we had used a Microsoft database. There are probably 100 or so of those. We had the good fortune of unveiling it at the beginning of COVID, so it didn't get the traction that we had hoped, but we're pushing, and even reinventing DJB Zone. It's going to be using a lot of HTML so that we can have very easy remote access, remote contributions on just about any platform you can imagine. So it's we're kind of in that scale. We are not in the very top tier of playout systems. I have worked for Scott Studios, Computer Concepts, when they were purchased by Scott Studios, DMark, when they purchased Scott Studios, Google, when they purchased DMark, and Wide Orbit, when it purchased Google. And I was director of sales for Google, and I was the local head of automation. They were based in Coppell, Texas, just south of where I live and just north of Dallas. I was after I left Wide Orbit in September of COVID, national director of sales. There was very internationally. They offered me a wonderful exit package, which I grabbed. Sat out for about 6 months and went to work for Radio Cloud. They called me and asked if I would help them onboard themselves into the United States and make connections. And I spent a year and a half doing that. And they've got quite a few networks and individual stations that are using a cloud native solution, and it is the only one certified by Amazon. And they have multiple availability zones and a number of things. So quite proud of the work that I was able to do there. And I'm actually equally as proud of the work we're doing with DJB to bring it up to a top level playout system, where it had been kind of in the mid-tier, to be honest. But with some of the programs that they have supplied, it makes it much easier to get into larger markets. I guess about 5 or 6 systems ago, we put in a system with completely fiber between the studios, fiber between the studios and the transmitter. Everything was Wheatstone glass control panels, top notch, absolutely top notch facility. So that's kind of the groups that we are fond of, but we'll serve anyone because we have products to suit top tier, middle tier, and those who have lesser requirements. I will take the opportunity to do this and just show you. I think we're still sharing that screen. That happens to be DJB zone. I'm not selling anything. I have an aversion to barging into SBE meetings and selling things. But I know some people learn because they don't have the opportunity to get to the NAB or maybe some of the state shows. But this is our competitor. We anticipate for wide orbit and Zeta in the very top tier. It has virtually everything that those systems do. Each one of these modules is configurable, could be moved around. All the graphics can be changed. It's a bit of a chameleon, so it allows you to do many things right at the control studio. You can even have a production system right next to it in the control room, a production facility anywhere in the radio station, or a complete production facility outside the radio station connected to a server that's in the facility. So it does a lot of things, but again, not here to sell. I just wanted to relate to you some considerations when you make a decision for another playout system. And I'm guessing TV stations have similar levels of things to consider when you purchase a playout system. And yours probably last longer. Radio stations tend to change a little more frequently. They aren't quite as embedded into what they do, and it's probably not quite as expensive. So, any other questions? Okay.
Thank you much for your time and for sharing the food with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Yes.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I'd like to thank Taylor. We worked. I had lots of conflict this spring. Today's the first day of summer. Congratulations. So I do appreciate the opportunity to be with you, and look forward to seeing some of you in person.
We look forward to it. Take care, sir.
All right, take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Best regards.
The other business? Yeah, they're here, Joe. Anyone else is here who,
Oh, yeah.
members? Yeah, members. Mark Stanley? I don't think Mark is here.
Negative.
Negative, okay, so let's get Joe's, what's this? Douglas?
Yes.
They're in town, huh?
Yep.
I got there where they are. No.
Washington and Second. They were, fun story, one of my parents' first dates. So that's like that, kind of a special place for us.
And they were still warm, so that is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, their recipes changed a little bit since I first started going there, but they're still pretty damn good. They were Potbellies before Potbellies existed.
And it's a heck of a walk from here in the Skyway. But you can do it.
You can do it.
Yeah, you get your steps in, right? That's right.
Gary, I don't know if you got the time for us, but we'd love to potentially walk around a little and.
Absolutely.
see the place.
What we'll probably do is divide maybe into two, and Ryan will take one group, and I'll take the other. You know, just since we have the opportunity to hear about, you know, sort of the automation systems in radio, I can give you just a quick overview of what we have here. So as I mentioned to some of you, our master control now is hubbed, along with the other CBS O&Os, and that hub is in Atlanta at the Encompass digital media facility down there. And they basically are remote controlling 2 racks of Grass Valley ITX gear. So all the sources are feeding in from our satellite dishes and things like that. But they do all the ingest of all the commercials, syndicated programming, all that kind of stuff. And they do that for the ABC O&Os, quite a few other stations. It's quite a facility down there. So we use wide orbit as far as the traffic system, and then we have a traffic hub that's out in New Jersey. No, I can't think of where it is right now. At any rate, so the traffic system, talks to the IPX system. They download the logs, and then the logs are executed. If they lose control from Encompass, the playlist continues. And we advance our own breaks during live newscasts, and then it goes by the clock, to go to the network programs. There are, I think most of the network programs, the breaks are timed, but now network also sends out SCUDdy triggers. So all the affiliate stations can have their automation systems look at those SCUDdy triggers to run the brakes. Remember a while back, there was a Billy Joel concert. That was the infamous Billy Joel. And the end of the Billy Joel concert, they did not change the time for the SCUDdy trigger. Oops. They changed every other brake but the end brake. And so every station in the CBS network that was using any automation switched away.
Harris, that's the best promotion for the re-airing that you could have.
I would say, that was fortuitous though, yeah.
Yeah.
Take
So,
advantage of the publicity, bad publicity, but hey,
yeah.
good publicity.
And then on the production side, we have with Sony and ELC, a very similar type of interface for the TD directors, where the rundown from the newsroom computer system, and each story is a slug there, and any associated video and everything, and they're basically stepping through the list. They can go out of order if they need to. They've got hotkeys to do things like that, but it's really an automation system on its own, running within the automation system of master control. So
Now, how does when you put the information on your TV, it tells you what show you're watching. How does that information get?
So that's done for us. We use a vendor called DTV Innovations. And what they do is that they go out and they pull the list from Gracenote, which is a division of Nielsen. And Gracenote will then provide program data for as many stations as we need or that we have. And they'll pull that program data and insert it into the PSIP in the program tables.
Okay.
So every once in a while, we'll get a viewer that calls and says, my little recorder stopped recording you where I don't get any guide data. And every once in a while, we have to go in and just, reboot that system to get it going again. And we just changed the Sony switchers and the ELC back in October. And Ryan just finished up moving us back into our main control room. We were split apart, kind of like we did during COVID, with TV directors in one spot and producers in another spot. And they did a great job with it. They didn't miss a beat. And I think it wasn't that long since they had to do it for COVID. So it's probably a good practice to do every once in a while. And that's a big ask too, is that they would really like to be able to do as many of those jobs remotely, if they have to. If it's a blizzard and they can't get in, rather than put everybody up at a hotel, if they can do it remotely, we'll try and do it. It's tough for the TV directors, but it can be done. And one of the secrets that we found of that was, using NDI, for all their monitoring needs. So we've got multiple NDI encoders, and we can send, multi-view monitors to those NDI encoders, and we can launch it, a team or a Zoom meeting, and put those up as a source, and they can size them and do whatever they want so that they can see. And the latency is, a few frames on a good connection. All right. Well, we want to go half and half here?
Sure.
Sure.